All right, so you're ready to really get a grip on this 2024 election.
Absolutely. It's shaping up to be a fascinating, if not a little crazy, election cycle.
Well, today we're doing a deep dive, and we've got something a little different for you.
Oh.
Yeah, instead of the usual American news sources, we're going international.
Interesting. Going outside the bubble can be very revealing.
Exactly. Sometimes you need an outsider's perspective to really understand what's going on.
I couldn't agree more.
So I've got this article here, Elecciones EU 2024. It's in Spanish. And, well, you are our election guru, so I'm hoping you can help us make sense of it.
I'm happy to help. It's fascinating to see how the U.S. election is being portrayed in other parts of the world.
All right, well, no surprises here. The article focuses on Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
Right. The current VP, a Democrat, going up against the former president, a Republican. Talk about a clash of styles.
You can say that again. It's like they come from completely different planets.
And the article really emphasizes the historical weight behind this election, especially for Harris.
In what way?
Well, if she wins, she'd be the first female president. That's huge in itself, right?
Absolutely. It's about time.
But not just that. She'd also be the first African-American president and the first Asian-American president. Imagine the message that would send, not just to the U.S., but to the whole world.
Wow, talk about breaking barriers. Okay, but then you have Trump. He's always full of surprises.
That he is.
This article mentioned he held a historic rally. And get this, with Elon Musk. Elon Musk. It's not exactly a pairing you see every day. I mean, what's the strategy there?
It's a really interesting question. On one hand, you have Trump, who positions himself as a champion of the working class. Right? And then you have Musk, who's basically the poster boy for this tech-driven, futuristic elite. It's like they come from completely different worlds. But by appearing together, maybe they're trying to bridge that gap, appeal to both sides.
It's like they're creating a whole new voter demographic. Make America Mars again or something. Okay, let's dive into the actual issues. The article breaks it down into four main categories. The economy, always a big one, immigration, reproductive rights, and climate change. So starting with the economy, what's the temperature there? What are people worried about?
Well, the article really highlights this stark difference in approach between the Democrats and the Republicans. On the Republican side, with Trump leading the charge, they're really hitting hard on inflation. Blaming it on the current administration's policies and saying tax cuts are the solution.
Right, the classic Republican playbook.
Exactly. But on the Democrat side, it seems like they're taking a longer-term approach, focusing on investments in infrastructure, clean energy, things like that.
So it's about immediate relief versus long-term investment.
That's a good way to put it. And the article also mentions social programs as a key point of difference.
Like what?
Expanding healthcare, education, social safety nets, basically. The role of government in addressing inequality.
Right. So it really comes down to this fundamental question. How much should the government be involved in the economy? It's a question with no easy answers.
That's for sure. And it's a question that every voter has to answer for themselves.
All right. Moving on to immigration, which has been a hot-button issue in the U.S. for, well, forever.
Yeah, and this article really doesn't shy away from that. It talks about how divided the country is on this issue, even though ironically, it's a nation built by immigrants.
And of course, the two candidates represent those two sides of the debate.
Totally. You have Trump taking his usual hardline stance. The article uses the phrase mano dura, stricter border control, cracking down on illegal immigration, that sort of thing.
And they even bring up the wall again.
Yep, the wall is back. It's become a symbol, really, of this whole approach to immigration. Tight control, keeping people out.
Right, like America first taken to the extreme. But on the other side, you have Harris, who's pushing for, as the article puts it, una reforma migratoria integral, comprehensive immigration reform.
Exactly. It mentions things like creating pathways to citizenship for undocumented immigrants who are already living and working in the U.S., and taking a more humanitarian approach to refugees.
It's about fundamentally different visions of what it means to be American and who gets to be a part of that.
Absolutely. It's about identity, belonging, the very soul of the nation.
Now let's move on to another issue that's deeply personal for so many Americans, reproductive rights.
This is another one where the article really doesn't hold back. It calls the overturning of Roe v. Wade a terremoto politico, a political earthquake.
Which it was. I mean, it sent shockwaves through the country, and the aftershocks are still being felt today. How's that playing out in this election?
Well, the article very clearly paints Harris as a staunch defender of abortion rights.
And Trump.
He's aligned himself with the anti-abortion movement. It's a stark reminder of how much elections matter, how they can have such a real, tangible impact on people's lives.
Absolutely. This isn't just some abstract political debate. This is about real people's lives, their bodies, their choices. Okay, last but not least, we have to talk about climate change. It feels like every election is the climate election now.
It's true. But this time there's a real sense of urgency. This article calls it a crisis, plain and simple.
And what do the candidates have to say about it?
Well, they're about as far apart as you can get. You have Harris, who's all about tackling climate change head-on. The article highlights her support for clean energy, sustainable technology, that sort of thing.
So it's about investing in the future, finding solutions.
Exactly. Recognizing that addressing climate change isn't just an environmental issue. It's an economic issue, a social issue, a global issue.
It's about everything.
Right. But then you have Trump, who has a history, let's say, of downplaying the severity of the climate crisis.
Yeah, to put it mildly. So once again, you have these two completely different visions of how to approach what's arguably the biggest challenge of our time. And it's not just an American issue either, is it? I mean, the U.S. is such a global powerhouse.
Definitely not. Whatever happens in the U.S. in terms of climate policy has ripple effects around the world. So yeah, the stakes are incredibly high.
Lots to think about. When we come back, we're going to dig deeper into how these two very different candidates are running their campaigns and what it all means for, well, you. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, so we're back, and I gotta say, this whole muy reñida thing really stuck with me. Basically, this article is saying it's a total nail-biter.
Yeah, they're not kidding around. It's like both candidates are running neck and neck.
And they keep mentioning those swing states, like they hold the whole election in their hands or something.
Well, in a way they do. Remember the Electoral College?
Oh, right, that whole thing. It's a little confusing.
Yeah, it's not the most straightforward system, but it's important to understand. Basically, it means the candidate with the most votes from actual people doesn't necessarily win.
Wait, seriously? Yep. It's all about those electoral votes. And each state gets a certain number. And swing states are the ones that could go either way.
So they're like the ultimate prize.
Exactly. And that's why you see so much focus on them during the campaign.
It's all about winning over those swing voters. Okay, so speaking of the campaign, this article talks about how different Harris and Trump are approaching it.
Totally different playbooks.
Like night and day.
Exactly. You've got Trump, always the showman, right? Rallies, social media, going straight to the people.
It's like he's running on energy drinks and sound bites. But does that really work anymore?
It seems to work for his base. It's about tapping into emotion, creating a sense of excitement, belonging, even anger sometimes.
And Harris, it seems like she's going for something a little more, I don't know, traditional.
Absolutely. More policy-focused, highlighting her experience, her competence. The article mentions that she visited those areas hit by Hurricane Helene, showing she's a leader who steps up in a crisis.
Right, projecting that steady hand at the wheel image. So it's a fascinating contrast. On one hand, you have this big, brash personality, and on the other, you have this more, I guess, presidential demeanor.
It's a classic dichotomy in politics.
Yeah.
Do voters want someone who's exciting and disruptive, or do they want someone who's experienced and predictable?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it seems like every election, it gets harder and harder to predict what's going to resonate with voters. But okay, so we've got these two very different candidates, both fighting tooth and nail for those swing states. What's next? What are the big things to watch for in these last few months?
Well, it's going to be a whirlwind. Expect to see even more campaign events, more targeted advertising, maybe even some surprise announcements or endorsements. And of course, those debates are going to be huge.
Oh yeah, the debates. Everyone will be glued to their screens for those.
Absolutely. It's their chance to really speak directly to voters, address those key issues, and try to land a knockout punch.
But ultimately, it comes down to those individual voters, right? Especially in those swing states.
Exactly. Every vote counts. And it's those undecided voters who are really going to determine the outcome of this election. What will sway them? Will it be the economy, climate change, healthcare?
Or maybe something completely unexpected. It's anyone's guess at this point. But, this isn't just some abstract political drama. This election, it affects all of us. It really hits you, reading this article from outside the U.S., how much this election really matters, not just for Americans, but for everyone.
It's true. The U.S. has a huge impact on the world stage, whether we like it or not.
Exactly. This isn't just about who occupies the White House for the next 4 years. It's about the future of global security, trade, climate change, all these massive issues that affect every single one of us.
Absolutely. The article really drives that point home, how the decisions made in this election will have ripple effects across the globe.
It can feel kind of overwhelming, to be honest.
I hear you.
But that's why we do these deep dives. We dig into these complex topics, look at them from different angles, so that you, the listener, can feel more informed, more empowered.
Knowledge is power, right? The more you understand the issues, the candidates, the global stakes, the better equipped you are to make informed decisions, have those important conversations.
Exactly. And this election, it's not a spectator sport. This is where you have a voice, a chance to shape the future, not just for yourself, but for generations to come. So yeah, stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, get out there and vote. That's all from us today, folks. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.